2 weeks before Thanksgiving, I stood at my kitchen counter with a stack of papers in my hand and tears I refused to let fall. The papers were not mine. My sister had not meant for me to find them, but I had. And now I knew exactly what she and her husband had been planning while they smiled at me across the dinner table every Sunday. I did not cry. I made coffee instead. My name is Margaret. I am 63 years old. I taught elementary school for 31 years, raised my daughter mostly on my own after my husband passed, and paid off this house with my own hands before I turned 55. I say all of that not to brag, but because what happened next matters more when you understand who I was before it happened. I was not a foolish woman. I was a tired one, and tired people miss things that a well-rested version of themselves would have caught much sooner. My sister is 4 years younger than me. We grew up in this same house, actually. When our parents passed, the property came to both of us equally. I bought out her half fair and square, wrote her a check, and she signed the deed transfer without a single complaint. That was 11 years ago. I thought we had settled things cleanly. I thought we understood each other. I was wrong. She and her husband moved back to town about 2 years after I completed the buyout. They bought a house 20 minutes away, close enough for Sunday dinners, far enough that I still had my quiet. For a while, things were fine. Good, even. We got into a rhythm. She would bring dessert. I would cook. Her husband would sit in my late husband's armchair like he had always belonged there, which I let go of because family is family. And I had learned long ago that some battles are not worth the blood. Then my daughter moved out of state for work. That was 14 months ago. And something shifted. Looking back, I can see the exact moment the shift happened, though I did not recognize it then. My sister sat across from me one afternoon and said, very gently, very sweetly, "You know, Maggie, this house is a lot for one person." She looked around my kitchen with the expression people wear when they are pretending to be concerned but are actually calculating. "You do not have to hold on to it just out of habit." I told her I was not holding on out of habit. I was holding on because it was my home. She smiled the way she always does when she disagrees but does not want to say so directly. "Of course. I just want you to be comfortable." I thanked her and changed the subject. But the seed had been planted, and I did not know it yet. Over the following months, small things began to happen. Her husband started offering to handle things for me. Not asking, offering, but in that particular way where declining feels rude. He drove me to a doctor's appointment once when my car was in the shop and spent the entire ride talking about property values in the county, how they had doubled in the last decade, how some people were sitting on gold and did not even realize it. I nodded and looked out the window and did not say much. Then my sister started mentioning a place across town. A retirement community, she called it. Beautiful grounds, friendly people, very safe. She brought it up the way you mention a restaurant you like, casually, without pressure, just dropping the name into conversation so it could sit there and get familiar. I noticed. I filed it away. I did not act on it yet because I told myself I was being paranoid. Then one Sunday in early November, I found the papers. My sister had come over to help me organize the storage room. That was her idea, by the way, not mine. I had lived with that storage room exactly the way it was for 6 years and felt perfectly fine about it. But she insisted it would be good to sort through things before the holidays, and I appreciated the company, so I agreed. She had been in the storage room for maybe 40 minutes when she came out to ask me for a glass of water. I went to the kitchen, filled the glass, and walked back. She was not in the hallway where I expected her. I heard a sound from the small office at the end of the hall, a drawer closing. Not loudly, quietly, the kind of quiet that only exists when someone is trying not to be heard. I set the water glass on the hallway table and stood still for a moment. She came out of the office a few seconds later with her phone in her hand. She smiled. "I thought I heard your printer going. Were you printing something earlier?" "No," I said. "Oh, probably just the pipes." She took the water, thanked me, and we went back to the storage room. That evening after she left, I went into the office. The desk drawer was slightly open. I am a precise person, a habit from 31 years of keeping a clean classroom, and that drawer was never left open. Inside, on top of the folders where I keep my household documents, was a photograph I did not put there. A photograph of this house, taken from the street, the kind a real estate agent takes for a listing. On the back, in my sister's handwriting, was a name, a phone number, and the words, "Confirm square footage, Original deed year. I sat down in the desk chair and did not move for a long time. I did not sleep much that night. I lay in the dark and let myself think through every conversation, every offer, every gentle suggestion of the past year. The retirement community, the property values speech, the drawer that had been opened, and underneath all of it, the quiet understanding that my sister knew this house better than almost anyone. She had grown up in it. She knew what it was worth, and she had signed away her half a decade ago for a sum that, in today's market, looked very small by comparison. The next morning, I called my daughter. She listened without interrupting, which is something I love about her. When I finished, she was quiet for a second. Then she said, "Mum, do not confront anyone yet. Find out what you can first." She was right. I knew she was right. But it was hard to sit still when the thing being threatened was the only home I had ever known. That week, I did two things. First, I called a real estate attorney I had used years before to review my deed and make sure everything was still clean and in my name only. But she mentioned something that made me uneasy. She said she had recently seen cases where family members had used informal pressure, sometimes accompanied by paperwork framed as estate planning, to get elderly homeowners to sign over partial interest or co-ownership rights. The framing is usually around protection, she told me. They say they want to help manage things if something happens to you. It sounds caring. It is not. That phrase stayed with me. It sounds caring. It is not. The second thing I did was pay attention. I started noticing more. My sister called 3 times that week, which was more than usual. Her husband mentioned the retirement community by name for the first time, said he had a friend who toured it and was very impressed. He asked if I had ever considered whether I might need more help around the house as I got older. I told him I had a cleaning service and 2 good knees. He laughed. But his eyes did not. Then, 4 days before Thanksgiving, something happened that changed everything. My neighbour across the street has a daughter who is in her early 30s and works at a local real estate office. She is a quiet young woman, the kind you wave to but do not know well. I had not spoken to her in months. But that Thursday morning, she rang my doorbell. When I opened the door, she looked nervous. She was holding a large envelope with both hands and glancing over her shoulder like someone had followed her. I stepped aside and let her in. She did not sit down. She stood just inside the front hallway and told me in a low, steady voice that she had been helping process some inquiry paperwork at her office and had recognized my address. She said she had seen the listing request. She said there were notes attached to the file that bothered her so much she had not been able to sleep. I asked her to show me. The envelope contained printed copies of documents. A property inquiry submitted under my name, listing the house as available for evaluation. A letter drafted to a title company, asking about processing fees for a transfer. A note from a consultant, not a real estate agent but someone her office used for assisted living placement, saying he had spoken with a family member who believed the current resident might be receptive to relocation if approached correctly. I had to read that last sentence 3 times. Approached correctly. As if I were a problem to be solved, not a person to be asked. At the bottom of the stack was a document that turned my stomach completely. It was a draft, incomplete but clear, for a limited power of attorney. My name at the top, my sister named as the primary agent for financial and property decisions, a line that read, "Grantor may be experiencing decreased capacity for complex financial management, and designation is intended to provide family support and continuity." Decreased capacity. I folded that page and set it face down on the table. I was not sure I trusted myself to keep looking at it. The young woman from across the street watched me carefully. She said, "I know this is a lot. I almost did not come. But my grandmother lost her house this way. Different family, same paper trail. Nobody believed her until it was too late. I did not want that to happen to you." I asked if the documents had been filed anywhere officially. She shook her head. They were still in the drafting stage. The Thanksgiving holiday, she believed, was when they planned to present everything. A family gathering. A soft moment. Documents that looked like generosity. After she left, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. My late husband had a saying he used when things got hard. He would sit down, pour 1 cup of coffee, and say, "Decide what kind of woman you want to be when this is over. Not during it. After. The kind of woman you want to be when the dust settles." I decided. I called my attorney back the same afternoon. Then I called my daughter. Then I made a list. 1. Protect the house title, immediately. 2. Speak to an estate attorney about formalizing my own documents, on my own terms, with my own chosen representative. 3. Say nothing to my sister or her husband until I was completely ready. 4. Let Thanksgiving come. My attorney moved quickly. By Friday, she had placed a notation on the title, meaning any transfer attempt would trigger a required verification process that could not be bypassed without my direct, in-person confirmation with proper identification. She also helped me draft a durable power of attorney, naming my daughter, completely legal, completely clean, which I signed before a notary that same afternoon. When I got home, I made dinner and ate at the kitchen table by myself with the lights on and old music playing from the radio in the corner. Outside, the November air had gone grey and cold. The oak tree in the front yard had dropped most of its leaves. This house had held my whole adult life. My children's drawings were still faintly visible in pencil on the doorframe where I used to measure their height each birthday. The floor in the hallway still creaked in the same spot it had creaked since I was 7 years old. Nobody was taking this from me. The following Sunday, my sister called to confirm Thanksgiving plans. She sounded warm and easy, chatting about the menu, asking if I needed her to bring anything. I said just the sweet potato casserole, the one she makes with the pecans. She laughed. Of course. She asked if I was doing all right. You seem a little quiet lately, she said. Just getting ready for the holidays, I told her. There was a short pause. It is going to be such a good day, she said. We have something we want to share with you. Just some family things. Nothing stressful. Nothing stressful. I had heard that phrase before. It belongs to a specific category of reassurances that people use when they know what they are about to do is very stressful indeed. I said I looked forward to it. Thanksgiving morning arrived cold and bright. I was up before sunrise, which I always am. I made myself breakfast slowly, dressed carefully, and put on the earrings my husband gave me for our 20th anniversary. I wear them when I need to feel grounded. They are small, plain, gold, and they remind me of who I belong to. My sister and her husband arrived at noon, carrying dishes and a bottle of wine and big, cheerful voices that filled the rooms the way holiday enthusiasm sometimes does. A little too much, a little too loud. My sister kissed my cheek and said the house looked beautiful. Her husband shook my hand and looked around the living room with the particular kind of appreciation that means something other than appreciation. We ate early because that has always been our tradition. The table was full. The food was good. We talked about small things, neighbours, weather, a cousin who had just had a baby, a television show my sister had been watching. Her husband told a long story about a work trip that I only half listened to, but underneath all of it, I could feel the machinery turning. My sister kept touching her purse, which sat beside her chair. Her husband looked at his watch twice during the meal. They glanced at each other in that way couples do when they have agreed on a plan and are waiting for the right moment to begin. The right moment came after dessert. My sister cleared her throat softly. She looked at me across the table with that particular expression, the gentle one, the caring one, the one I now understood meant she had already decided what was going to happen and was just waiting for me to catch up. Maggie, she said, we have been thinking so much about you lately, about making sure everything is taken care of. We put together a few things we want to go over together, just to make sure you are protected. Her husband reached into the bag he had brought in from the car and set a folder on the table. It was thick. It was organized. It had tabs. He pushed it toward me with a warm smile. Nothing complicated. We just want to help manage things going forward. You should not have to worry about all of this alone. I looked at the folder. Then I looked at my sister. What kind of things? I asked. She leaned forward slightly. The house, your finances, just having family oversight in place, so that if anything ever happened, there would be no confusion, no delays. We can walk through it together. It is all very straightforward. Her husband added, we researched everything. An attorney reviewed the language. An attorney she chose. Documents she prepared. Oversight she would hold. I placed both hands flat on the table. I appreciate you thinking of me, I said. I have actually been doing some thinking of my own. My sister smiled, relieved that I seemed open. That is wonderful. I spoke with my own attorney, I said. Last week. The smile did not disappear exactly. It changed. Became a little still. She helped me review my title, update my estate documents, and name my daughter as my legal representative for any financial or property matters going forward. I said it evenly, without anger. The way you state something that has already been decided. Everything was notarized and filed Thursday. Her husband's hand moved slightly on the folder. Stopped. My sister's voice came out careful and slow. Maggie, that is great, but we were just trying to help. You do not always need to go outside the family for these things. I did not go outside the family, I said. I went to my daughter. She took a breath. Her husband shifted in his chair. And then, because people who have built a plan rarely abandon it gracefully, she said the thing I had been waiting for. We are just worried about you being here alone, managing everything by yourself. At your age, at my age, I repeated. She pressed on. It is a lot of responsibility. The house, the property taxes, the maintenance. We only want to make sure you are not overwhelmed. I looked at her for a long moment. I thought about the photograph on the back of my desk drawer, the listing inquiry with my address, the word arrangement in that draft document. Decreased capacity. I said, I found the photograph you left in my office drawer. The one of the house with the agent's name on the back. The room went very quiet. And I have seen the paperwork from the real estate office, the draft power of attorney, the note from the placement consultant. I watched her face. I want you to know that I am not confused. I am not overwhelmed. I am not someone who needs to be approached correctly. My sister's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Her husband said, very quietly, Where did you get those documents? That does not matter, I said. What matters is that I have them. And my attorney has copies. He looked at my sister. She looked at her hands. For a moment, nobody moved. Then she did something I had not fully expected. She cried. Not the real kind. The managed kind. The kind that comes with soft sounds and a slight tremble at the corner of the mouth, carefully controlled. Maggie, you are making this sound like something terrible. We love you. We are family. I grew up in this house too. You did, I said. And 11 years ago, I paid you your fair share of it. That transaction was complete. That was before the market. It was a legal agreement, I said. Signed and recorded. Her husband tried a different approach. His voice went gentle, almost wounded. We never meant any harm. We were genuinely concerned. Maybe we went about it the wrong way, but the intention was good. I thought about what my attorney had told me. It sounds caring. It is not. If the intention was good, I said, you would have asked me. Not prepared documents in my name without my knowledge. Not researched retirement placement without telling me. Not drafted power of attorney language that described me as having decreased capacity. He flinched at that. Just slightly. But I saw it. You were going to present all of this at Thanksgiving dinner, I said, surrounded by food and warmth, with the assumption that I would feel too uncomfortable to refuse in front of family. That is not concern. That is staging. My sister looked up from her hands. Her eyes were dry now. The performance had passed. What came next surprised me. Not her anger, I expected that, but her honesty. For a few seconds, the careful, sweet, managing version of her fell away, and what was left looked more like the girl I had grown up with, frightened and guilty and trying to cover it. The house has tripled in value, she said. You are sitting here alone in it, and I got nothing when it should have been half mine. You got exactly what we agreed to, I said. We were young. I did not understand what I was signing away. You had an attorney present, I said. I made sure of that. She shook her head. You always had more. You always managed better. And when Mum and Dad were gone, you ended up with everything. There it was. Not just greed. Not just a real estate scheme. Something older than that. A grievance that had been sitting for years, growing quietly behind Sunday dinners and sweet potato casserole, waiting for the moment she thought she could do something about it. I sat with that for a second. I let it be what it was. Painful, true in its own way, and still not an excuse for what she had tried to do. I understand that you have felt this way, I said. You should have told me. We could have talked. Instead, you drafted documents calling me incapacitated and made plans to list my home. Her husband said nothing. He was looking at the table. My sister pressed her lips together and did not answer. I stood up slowly. I was tired in a way that had nothing to do with age. I would like you to leave now, I said. Not because I hate you. because I need you to understand that this conversation is finished, and none of those documents will ever be signed." She stood too. She picked up her purse without looking at me. Her husband folded the folder and tucked it under his arm with the careful movements of someone who has realized they miscalculated badly. At the door, my sister paused. She turned back, and for a moment I thought she might say something real, something honest and unguarded, the kind of thing that might have started a very different conversation. She said, "You always have to win, don't you?" I did not answer that. I opened the door and held it until they were both outside. When I closed it behind them, I stood in the front hallway for a long moment. The old oak floor creaked the same way it always had. The light above the entry table threw its usual warm circle on the wall. Somewhere down the street, a child was playing, laughing at something, and the sound drifted through the glass, light and easy. I went to the kitchen and made tea. The weeks after Thanksgiving were quiet and complicated in the way that family fallouts tend to be. My sister and I did not speak for almost a month. My daughter flew in for a weekend and we sat together at this kitchen table and went through every document, every account, every record. She asked careful questions, took careful notes, and never once made me feel foolish for having let things go as far as they did. I reported the real estate inquiry to my attorney, who sent a formal letter to the office that had processed the paperwork. The agent involved claimed ignorance, said he had been told I was fully aware and supportive of the evaluation. Whether that was true or not I cannot say, but the inquiry was withdrawn and no further action was taken from that end. The draft power of attorney documents went to my attorney's file, along with the note about placement consultation. She told me I had grounds to pursue this further if I chose to. I thought about it carefully, and in the end, I decided not to press for legal action, not because what happened was acceptable, but because the people involved were family, and I did not want my remaining years consumed by fighting people I had once loved. What I did instead was send my sister one letter. I wrote it by hand. I told her that I understood where her bitterness came from, and that I was genuinely sorry she had felt left behind. I told her that if she had ever wanted to have that conversation honestly, I would have listened. I also told her clearly and without cruelty that the house was mine, the decisions about my life were mine, and that I would not be made to feel confused or fragile or incapable for understanding that. I told her that if she wanted a relationship with me, it would have to be built on honesty, and that the door was not permanently closed, but that it would stay shut until she could stand on the other side of it, without an agenda. She did not respond for 6 weeks. When she finally called, it was a Tuesday morning. Her voice was smaller than usual. She did not apologize for everything, but she apologized for the documents. She said her husband had pushed harder than she should have allowed. She said she knew it was wrong, that she had told herself stories about it until the wrong started looking like practicality. She cried a little, the real kind this time, slower and messier and less controlled. I listened. I did not forgive her completely, not that day. Real forgiveness takes longer than one phone call and means more than saying the right words. But I told her I had heard her, and that was true. We have spoken a few times since then, carefully, like people who have burned something between them and are still deciding whether to build again in the same place. I do not know yet what we will become to each other. I know what we were, and I know what almost happened, and both of those things live in the space between us now. As for me, this house is still mine, the deed is clean, my documents are in order, my daughter knows everything, my attorney knows where to find me. Last week I went across the street and brought the young woman who had helped me a tin of the lemon shortbread I make every December. She stood in her doorway with wide eyes, and I told her that what she had done took courage. She said she had been afraid I would be angry with her for getting involved. I told her that the opposite of that was true. She hugged me quickly, the way young people do when they feel something but do not quite know what to do with it, and I walked back across the street under a winter sky that was the exact colour of my husband's old grey sweater, the one I still keep folded on the chair by the bedroom window. I think about the version of me who almost missed all of this. The version who would have sat at that Thanksgiving table and picked up the pen because she did not want to make things uncomfortable. The version who would have convinced herself that her family's concern was real and that resisting it meant being difficult. I was that woman for a long time. Easier to trust than to question. More afraid of silence than of being used. I am not her anymore. I have learned something about the particular cruelty that hides in soft language. Words like help and protect and simplify and family planning. Words that sound like open hands but are actually closed fists. I have learned that declining to be managed is not the same as refusing to be loved. I have learned that the most dangerous threats do not come through windows. They come through Sunday dinners and holiday tables, wrapped up in the names of people you chose to trust. If you are watching this, and something about my story feels familiar, I want you to hear one thing clearly. Being older does not make you a burden. It does not make you a resource to be divided. It does not make your home available, or your signature negotiable, or your mind a problem for someone else to solve. Your life is yours. The people who love you honestly will never need you to prove it by signing something. And if someone in your life is making you feel like being careful is the same as being difficult, let me tell you what I have learned in 63 years. The careful ones survive. The ones who ask the right questions and read the fine print and trust their own instincts even when the room wants them to stay quiet. Those are the ones who keep their houses and their names and their peace. I still drink my tea at this kitchen table most mornings. The floor still creaks in the hallway. The oak tree is bare now, but the roots go deeper than anyone standing on the lawn would ever guess. This house is mine. I plan to leave it when I am ready, and no one else gets to decide when that is. If this story meant something to you, I would love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me what you would have done. Tell me if something like this has happened to you. And if you are new here, please subscribe and stay close, because there are more stories coming, and every single one of them is about women who decided they were done being underestimated.